Okay, I can make a quick video for this. I was about to do one for the message editor anyways, and since I have my microphone, well, I have my cheap microphone right now, but since I have my microphone out, I can kind of make a quick video. It's in the middle of the night, everyone's asleep, that's why I'm kind of keeping it quiet. So pointers various mesh work out in the STG entries, so I'll do a quick explanation of how the STG entries work out, or at least as far as I know it. So the overall structure of the STG file kind of looks like this. You've got the header, and the header has entries which are 0x30 in length per header, so it just goes down bump, 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 bump. And what I do is the game doesn't actually, most of the time when you have an archive, the game will say, hey, there are so many entries in this archive, and then once you read how many headers are how many files are in the archive, you know how many to go down to, and that gives you the offset for when the header ends. The game actually doesn't give you the length of the header. What I think is going on is the game uses other places to kind of reference where a tile is, and will just jump in there and doesn't really care about the length of the file. So since the start of the first header, the start of the first definition for the first tile always means the end of the header. So what I do is I go in and read the first offset from the header and then jump down, and that gives you the quad definition. So the header is a 0x30 length, and it looks like this. The first 4 bytes are some kind of ID, and it's kind of split into 2 bytes and 2 bytes. It'll generally say 1 and then -1 or something like that. These, I took notes on them before. They're generally like callbacks, or the best kind of term I can define is callbacks. Things like if you read a sign, or if it goes to a door or something like that, it'll say like this is locked, this is not locked. These kind of tend to, if there's some kind of interaction associated with the tile, they kind of tend to be in here. I forgot what these two were. There's just kind of like this 6, 1, 0. There's kind of seems to be this specific pattern that happens on a couple tiles versus other tiles. Never forget what that does. And then here you've got the actual high, medium, and low offset for the visual part of the tile. And I think the high, medium, and low are something for the collision. I forget what I commented out for collision. I took notes on it somewhere. I could probably find it again. So right now we're just interested in the high offset. So the high offset is the start of the tile plus 0x18. And that will give you the high offset. So you read the header, you get the number, it's the 0x18 will be around here, and that'll give you the pointers to the quad definition. Now the quad definition is, I took notes all the way up here, and the quad definition kind of looks like this. The quad definition will have, okay, there's 2 textures in here, and then there's 3 different pieces of geometry that's being assigned. I don't know what this 4 is. It just looks at the lower 4 bytes, and I could comment out this 4 because 4 is a single bit. I could comment out this 4, and it didn't really seem to change the game at all. And then I forget what this 1 is. I might even be throwing it away. So the first 2 D words are 4 bytes in here, so there's 2 textures. So this is the call to look at the palette and the image from the frame buffer for 1, and the palette and the image for the frame buffer for 2. And then this is the tricky part. So these are, let's see, the first 4 bytes are the call back to the UV area, and then the second 4 bytes are the pointer to the number of quads. So I forget. Oh, or wait, no. Damn it. Okay, so I think 1 is the UV, and then at the end gives you the texture number. And then over here is the number of quads, and the way they did something really tricky. It's 1A0984. Most of the time when the game has a pointer, it uses all 4 bytes. The tricky part about this that took me several months to figure out is they were only using three bytes for the pointer, and they can get away with that because there's only 2 megabytes of memory, and you only need 3 bytes to allocate anywhere between 2 megabytes. So this kind of threw me off. So I'd have to go back and check my code to figure out exactly what it is, but I can give you the kind of idea. Is the first one is the UV pointer, and the second one is the actual quad definition. So if we go back down to here, I'll go back down to the overview again. So the header will give you a point to the offset for here. The quad definition will give you the number of textures, the number of geometry, and then pointers to the UV values. And the UV values, it's just a quad, so it'll be UVA, UVB, UVC, UVD. So it's like what I think that's 2 bytes per UV, and then 4 of those. So it's like 8 bytes at a time, and it's just, wherever you get the offset to, it's 8 bytes for however many quads are being defined. And then for the vertices, for the actual vertices, it has some, let's see, there's some, the definition for this, I don't know if I have any notes on it. Let's see. Here it is. All right, so what it is these bytes are the first, for the actual quad definitions or the vertices themselves. The first bytes are the vertex colors, and it's just grayscale. So it'll have 3, I think it has 3 entries, and then there's 3 or 4 entries, and it's just the it'll give you the darkness. So the game has vertex colors, but it only has vertex colors in the grayscale, and that kind of adjusts how light or dark any given tile surface is. And then from here it's XYZ, 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 XYZ until the next one. So it's 12 bytes for it's 3 bytes for XYZ. So 3 bytes for XYZ, and then 4 quads, that's 12 bytes, and then that goes, so it's 16 bytes per quad, and you find the offset of where it starts, you get the vertex color information, and then you get XYZ, XYZ, XYZ per bytes. I skipped over the scale. The scale is somewhere in the definition header, and since that's kind of wonky, it's kind of hit or miss on that. And the only thing to keep in mind for this is X and Z are whatever axis you want to use, axis 1, axis 2, axis 3. The first axis and the third axis, so X and Z, are signed bytes. So they're minus 128 up until positive 127. And then the second Y one is unsigned. So Y is between 0 and 255. And that's just a weird quirk that I had to work out. And that's kind of how it is. So there's really only 2 or 3 pointers that you have to trace through to actually get the entire STG definition. It's mostly just the shenanigans of how the game kind of deals with different fringe cases and different use cases. But going back to the overview again, if I can find it, you go with the header, you find the offset for the file for the quad definition. The quad definition is in here. It's really compact. The game kind of packs a lot into a very small amount of space, so it's just a matter of reading and interpreting that. The UV values are pretty straightforward, and then the lighting and then the actual XYZ values for the vertices are actually pretty straightforward. As a side note, the callbacks, I think collision jumps down here, and it probably points to the same vertices because it doesn't need UV, so it probably just has a similar definition to the quads and without the textures, and it just says, hey, use these quads to check against, and it's probably going to be a simplified version of the map, but I think for modern purposes the map is already simple enough to do most collision checking in most engines, so I kind of never really bothered to look into either of those. It was mostly just tracking down through header, quad definition, UV values, lighting and vertices, or vertex color, and the actual vertex positions. So I guess this I took the opportunity to make a video. Hopefully it helps me organize my thoughts for writing the wiki later, but at least hopefully it should give you a quick idea of what the STG files look like in Megaman Legends.